leaders of the community of Latin American Caribbean states analyzed on Tuesday the assault on the Mexican embassy in Quito in virtual meeting. The Attorney General of Venezuela, Tarek William Saab, reported on the advances in the investigation into the assassination attempt against President Nicolás Maduro on March 25th. And in Palestine, the Israeli occupation forces have killed at least 33,843 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip in 193 days of genocide. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The leaders of the community of Latin American Caribbean states analyzed on Tuesday the assault on the Mexican embassy in Quito. The extraordinary virtual summit was convened by the President pro tempore of the regional body, Xiomara Castro, to discuss the siege of the Mexican embassy. During the event, the President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, maintained before his CELAC counterparts his denunciation against Ecuador for the violations of international law for the violent seizure of the diplomatic headquarters in Quito. Meanwhile, the government of Venezuela demanded political asylum for former Vice President Jorge Glass.
The issue on Quito, it provides It provides a disgusting feeling for all of us, but so we have to take into account this incident. The world we are living in this moment, it doesn't seem a democratic world. It seems that to be a world that takes more huge steps to barbarism. Even barbarism at the moment, barbarism has to do with denial of democracy, with an array of global issues regarding the political power worldwide.
The Colombian leader also compared the actions at the Mexican embassy in Ecuador to the violations of international law in Iran and Gaza, both backed by Western forces.
But barbarism can enter again our space in the planet. What happened with Ecuador is part of that, barbarism. We cannot call it another way. It is not the same as what happened with Iran or with the bombings in Gaza.
The Cuban president urged the restitution of the former vice president of Ecuador, Jorge Glass, to the condition he had in the Mexican embassy, according to international law.
What happened not only has a negative impact on the bilateral relations between Mexico and Ecuador, it affects all the countries of this region and the international community as a whole. The violation of international law and the violation of the legitimate rights of a state is an offense to all. We urge to restore former Vice President Jorge Glass to his pre-asylum status in the Mexican embassy and to redirect his case in accordance with international law.
Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, for his part, pointed out that the measure of Daniel Noboa's government is considered a violation of the Vienna Convention.
This violates the Convention of Vienna of 1961, and so this cannot be allowed. We must defend the right of the asylum. 60 years ago, we have signed the Convention of Caracas about asylum, and so the International Court of Justice has been in charge of this issue, and it has been very crystal clear about it. Our challenge is to find ways to build again the international confidence, and we must look beyond, and we must find solutions. We must value our own means, our own resources. That is very needed for CELAC to continue to consolidate our regional unity.
In this context, the President of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, assured that his administration has ordered the closure of its embassy in Quito.
So I announce in front of all of you, in front of so I have ordered to close our embassy in Ecuador, to our consulate in Guayaquil, and so we ask the Venezuelan diplomatic corps to return to our country. So we are getting ready for our diplomatic corps in Ecuador to return till the constitutional order be restored in Ecuador.
The Venezuelan leader offered his government's full support to the Mexican president in his lawsuit against Ecuador before the International Court of Justice.
In all modesty, Venezuela joins fully to support Mexico in your demand to the International Court of Justice, which has been questioned. This is a very crystal clear incident. So the International Court has the opportunity to gain again the nation's trust. Mexico can count on Venezuela to in this battle, in the function of the future. Thank you very much, Presidents.
The temporary president of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, and president of Guyana, Irfan Ali, has opted for dialogue to solve the diplomatic crisis between Mexico and Ecuador.
The member states of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, reaffirm the importance of adherence to the principles of international law and rules of diplomatic engagement enshrined in the Geneva Convention, which codifies the inviolability of diplomatic missions and consular offices. CARICOM is therefore deeply concerned that the Republic of Ecuador has recently taken actions that have violated the premises of the Embassy of Mexico in Quito. We anticipate that both states will seek to resolve the matter through dialogue and access the relevant multilateral process with a view to ensuring that our region remains one of peace. This must be the priority of all of us.
Let's take a short break. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Attorney General of Venezuela, Tarek William Saab, reported on the advances in the investigation into the assassination attempt against President Nicolás Maduro on March 25th. The Venezuelan prosecutor denounced the various destabilization attempts against the nation in what he considered a part of an ongoing conspiracy. In this regard, Saab pointed out that 2 individuals carrying weapons ended up arrested in the surroundings of the National Electoral Council, where the president would register his candidacy. The Attorney General detailed that the detainees confessed being members of the political group Vente Venezuela and were paid to execute a plan that sought to promote violent actions, cause commotion in the population, and sabotage the elections.
Always the alibi. as they themselves have revealed with their cowardly spokesman outside of Venezuela. The alibi is to simulate that they are participating in an electoral event, but from there, to promote violent actions, criminal actions, insurrectional actions that threaten the Republican peace, against the rule of law of the country.
The Attorney General of Venezuela, Tarek William Saab, pointed out that Jerry Hostos confessed that he was trained in the use of firearms in order to carry out destabilizing actions and attack the demonstrators accompanying the caravan of President Nicolás Maduro.
He declares that in February 2024, Rojas summons him and Carlos Castillo to the old Caracas-La Guaira highway, where they received training in the use of firearms and Molotov cocktails, again with the purpose of generating sabotage. He relates what was carried out on March 25th, guided by whom? Carlos Julio Rojas, following instructions and orders from the head of the unnamed sect. Refers that the presence of people with cell phones and cameras was arranged in strategic places to record the action, and that once they took out their weapons and began to shoot, they would be recorded and then spread the action in social networks.
In Venezuela, the deadline for registering or updating data in the National Electoral Registry for the upcoming presidential elections in the country expires on Tuesday. Since March 18th, the National Electoral Council enabled 315 registration points throughout the national territory to attend to the voting population in Venezuela. Likewise, the electoral body detailed that the only requirement requested to process the inscriptions as new voters or to change the voting center was to present the current or expired laminated identity card. On July 28th, the South American country will hold its presidential elections. The authorities of the National Electoral Council of Venezuela received on Tuesday the members of the Electoral Observation Mission and discharged the affairs of the European Union, this being their second meeting. The leaders of the Venezuelan electoral body received at the headquarters of the Electoral Power several members designated by the European Alliance who are in Venezuela to prepare the observation. Representatives of the Carter Center also attend the CNE headquarters, who will have their first meeting with Venezuelan authorities prior to the elections. The meetings are part of the agenda that the governing entity established with the foreign entities that will participate in the observation process during the presidential elections to be held on July 28th. The people of Cuba celebrate the anniversary of the proclamation of the socialist character of the Cuban Revolution. On April 16th, the Caribbean island celebrates 63 years since the leader of the revolution, Fidel Castro, decreed the revolution as socialist after the Cuban fighters managed to expel the invading United States troops from Hiran Beach after more than 60 hours of combat. In the framework of this date, President Miguel Díaz-Canel attended, together with high-level government representatives, a commemorative act of the date that went down in national history as the Day of the Militiamen. In this regard, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel expressed on his X account that on the Day of the Militiamen, homage is paid to the heroic generation that won forever one of the most honorable titles of the Cuban Revolution by inflicting its first great defeat on imperialism in the Americas. The Israeli occupation forces have killed at least 33,843 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip in 193 days of genocide. The bombardments have also left 76,575 wounded since October 2023. According to local media, the Tel Aviv regime's troops have keep bombing the Gaza Strip. For the sixth consecutive day, attacks on the Al-Nusayrat camp continue, leaving at least 5 Palestinians killed and significant material damage during the last hours. Shelling was also reported in residential areas in the neighboring city of Al-Sara, in the western part of Deir al-Balah, and in the south of the Strip, in the city of Khan Yunis. Meanwhile, in the north, in the town of Beit Hanoun, the occupation forces detained dozens of young people who, according to testimonies, were forced to leave their shelters while artillery shells were fired at them. The president of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi, reaffirmed that any aggression against the country and its interests will be met with a response against the perpetrators. The Iranian leader, during a call with the Emir of Qatar, referred to the recent regional events, particularly the situation in the Gaza Strip, and insisted on the need to stop the Zionist crimes against the Palestinian citizens. In this regard, President Raisi described the Israeli attacks on the Iranian consulate in Syria as a sign of Tel Aviv's desperation given the failure in Gaza. The Iranian leader assured that the response against the Israeli occupier was based on Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, which contemplates the right to national defense against the inaction of the United Nations Security Council and other international organizations. We have a final short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Tuesday, the Copenhagen Stock Exchange building in the capital of Denmark was engulfed in a fire which affected the roof and has already caused the collapse of its iconic spire, with no reports of casualties for the moment. In this regard, the head of the capital's emergency department, Jacob Bedsted Andersen, confirmed a massive deployment of troops in the area, while the Danish emergency services said that the main work will be rescue and extinguishing the fire. The building, known in Danish as Borsen, and whose construction was completed in 1640, is located near the Christiansborg Palace, where the parliament is located, and is one of the country's main tourist attractions.
I don't have the overview yet about how many things have been destroyed, but I can say that there will be rooms that we haven't entered yet, but there has been a registration of all the paintings and all the furniture we have taken out of the building.
It's absolutely horrible. It's part of the story of the building of our city, a story that we can't just leave in a sea of flames. And that's why we will do everything we can to rebuild this.
Russian anti-aircraft forces on Tuesday shot down 3 unmanned drones directed from Ukraine that were flying over the border region of Belgorod. The Russian Defense Ministry said that the terrorist attack was repelled at 9:30 local time, and the aircraft were identified as fixed-wing aircraft. Likewise, the military agency informed that over the neighboring region of Kursk, also bordering Ukraine, the anti-aircraft defense has destroyed a balloon launched from the Ukrainian territory, which was aimed to hit installations. In recent weeks, more than 9,000 children have been evacuated from the Belgorod region to areas far away from Ukraine because of its constant attacks on the territory. Australian police on Tuesday announced the arrest of a 15-year-old boy for a knife attack on a bishop and his followers at an Assyrian Orthodox church in Sydney. The attack took place during a church service at Christ the Good Shepherd Church, in which Bishop Mary Emmanuel and a priest were injured. In this sense, New South Wales Police Commissioner Karen Webb said the suspect's comments pointed to a religious motive for the attack. In this way, the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, the nation's main domestic spy agency, and the Australian Federal Police joined state police in a counter-terrorism task force to investigate whether if anyone else was involved.
This is a disturbing incident. There is no place for violence in our community. There is no place for violent extremism. We are a peace-loving nation. This is a time to unite, not divide as a community and as a country.
At the same time, our job is also to look at individuals connected with the attacker to assure ourselves that there is no one else in the community with similar intent. At this stage, we have no indications of that, but it is prudent that we do this to determine there is no threats or immediate threats to security. At this time, we're not seeing that.
The traditional April Fair is held in Seville, Spain. This festival dates back to 1846 and has its origins in agriculture. At the time, the nobility used to go in their carriages to visit the livestock and agricultural products on display. As time went by, it became a festival of fun, entertainment and social coexistence until it became a festival of international renown. Unlike other traditional festivals, the Seville Fair does not have a fixed date in the calendar, since its celebration depends on the Holy Week. And although it is known as the Feast of April, it does not always fall in the fourth month of the year, although this year the date coincides with its name. The fair, which began on Sunday, April 14th, will end next Saturday, April 20th. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.